a Wikividi Documentaries production. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Enjoy. Sovereign Citizen Movement. The Sovereign Citizen Movement is a loose grouping of American, Canadian and Australian litigants, commentators, tax protesters, and financial scheme promoters. Self-described sovereign citizens see themselves as answerable only to their particular interpretation of the common law and as not subject to any government statutes or proceedings. In the United States, they do not recognize United States currency and maintain that they are free of any legal constraints. They especially reject most forms of taxation as illegitimate. Participants in the movement argue this concept in opposition to the idea of federal citizens, who, they say, have unknowingly forfeited their rights by accepting some aspect of federal law. The doctrines of the movement resemble those of the Freemen on the Land movement, more commonly found in the Commonwealth, such as in Britain and in Canada. Many members of the sovereign citizen movement believe that the United States government is illegitimate. J.J. McNabb, who writes for Forbes about anti-government extremism, has described the sovereign citizen movement as consisting of individuals who believe that the county sheriff is the most powerful law enforcement officer in the country, with authority superior to that of any federal agent, elected official, or local law enforcement official. This belief comes from the movement's origins in the white extremist group Posse Comitatus. The Federal Bureau of Investigation classifies some sovereign citizens as domestic terrorists. In 2010, a Southern Poverty Law Center estimated that approximately 100,000 Americans were hardcore sovereign believers, with another 200,000 just starting out by testing sovereign techniques for resisting everything from speeding tickets to drug charges. In surveys conducted in 2014 and 2015, representatives of U.S. law enforcement ranked the risk of terrorism from the sovereign citizen movement higher than the risk from Islamic extremism. The New South Wales Police Force in Australia has also identified sovereign citizens as a potential terrorist threat. Theories. Writing in American Scientific Affiliation, Dennis L. Foyt reviewed American Militias, Rebellion, Racism and Religion by Richard R. Barnes, and described the theory of Richard McDonald, a sovereign citizen leader, which is that there are two classes of citizens in America: the original citizens of the states, and U.S. citizens. McDonald asserts that U.S. citizens or 14th Amendment citizens have civil rights, legislated to give the freed black slaves after the Civil War rights comparable to the unalienable constitutional rights of white state citizens. The benefits of U.S. citizenship are received by consent in exchange for freedom. State citizens consequently take steps to revoke and rescind their U.S. citizenship and reassert their de jure common law state citizen status. This involves removing oneself from federal jurisdiction and relinquishing any evidence of consent to U.S. citizenship, such as a social security number, driver's license, car registration, use of zip codes, marriage license, voter registration, and birth certificate. Also included is refusal to pay state and federal income taxes, because citizens not under U.S. jurisdiction are not required to pay them. Only residents of the states, not its citizens, are income taxable, state citizens argue. And as a state citizen landowner, one can bring forward the original land patent and file it with the county for absolute or allodial property rights. Such allodial ownership is held without recognizing any superior to whom any duty is due on account thereof. Superiors include those who levy property taxes, or who hold mortgages or liens against the property. In support of his theories, McDonald has established state citizen service centers around the United States as well as a related web presence. Writer Richard R. Barnes asserts that sovereign citizens fail to sufficiently examine the context of the case laws they cite, and ignore adverse evidence, such as Federalist No. 15, where Alexander Hamilton expressed the view that the Constitution placed everyone personally under federal authority. Some sovereign citizens also claim that they can become immune to most or all laws of the United States by renouncing their citizenship, a process they refer to as expatriation, which involves filing or delivering a bogus, non-legal document claiming to renounce citizenship in a federal corporation, and declaring only to be a citizen of the state in which they reside, to any county clerk's office that can be convinced to accept it. History. The concept of a sovereign citizen originated in the Posse Comitatus movement as a teaching of Christian identity minister William P. Gale. The concept has influenced the tax protester movement, the Christian Patriot movement, and the Redemption movement, the last of which claims that the U.S. government uses its citizens as collateral against foreign debt. Gale identified the 14th Amendment to the United States Constitution as the act that converted sovereign citizens into federal citizens by their agreement to a contract to accept benefits from the federal government. Other commentators have identified other acts, including the Uniform Commercial Code, the Emergency Banking Act, the Zone Improvement Plan, and the alleged suppression of the Titles of Nobility Amendment. Some of those in the movement believe that the term sovereign citizen is an oxymoron and prefer to label themselves as individuals seeking the truth. Legal status of theories. Variations of the argument that an individual is not subject to various laws because the individual is sovereign have been rejected by the courts, especially in tax cases such as Johnson v. Commissioner, Wyckoff v. Commissioner, United States v. Hart, Young v. Internal Revenue Service, and Steeklin v. Commissioner. In Risner v. Commissioner, Greg Risner's argument that he was not subject to federal income tax because he was a self-governing free-born sovereign citizen was rejected by the court as being a frivolous protest of the tax laws. See also Maxwell v. Snow, and Roe v. Internal Revenue Service was rejected by the court and was ruled to be frivolous. Other tax cases include Heitman v. Idaho State Tax Commission, Coburn v. Commissioner, Glavin v. United States, and United States v. Greenstreet. In view of such cases, the Internal Revenue Service has added freeborn or sovereign citizenship to its list of frivolous claims that may result in a $5,000 penalty when used as the basis for an inaccurate tax return. Similarly, in a case in which an individual named Andrew Schneider was convicted and sentenced to 5 years in prison for making a threat by mail, Schneider argued that he was a free, sovereign citizen and therefore was not subject to the jurisdiction of the federal courts. That argument was rejected by the United States Court of Appeals for the Seventh Circuit as having no conceivable validity in American law. In a criminal case in 2013, the U.S. District Court for the Western District of Washington noted, defendant Kenneth Wayne Leeming was found guilty of 3 counts of retaliating against a federal judge or law enforcement officer by a false claim, 1 count of concealing a person from arrest, and 1 count of being a felon in possession of a firearm. On May 24, 2013, Leeming was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison. In Australia there have been a few minor cases where parties have invoked arguments surrounding the sovereign man. All of these arguments have failed before Australian courts. The courts in New Zealand also appear to have rejected the sovereign man arguments. Filing of false lien notices. According to the New York Times, cases involving so-called sovereign citizens pose a challenge to law enforcement officers and court officials in connection with the filing of false notices of liens, a tactic sometimes called paper terrorism. Anyone can file a notice of lien against property such as real estate, vehicles, or other assets of another under the Uniform Commercial Code and other laws. In most states of the United States, the validity of liens is not investigated or inquired into at the time of filing. Notices of liens are a cloud on the title of the property and may affect the property owner's credit rating, ability to obtain home equity loans, refinance the property or take other action with regards to the property. Notices of releases of liens generally must be filed before property may be transferred. The validity of a lien is determined by further legal procedures. Clearing up fraudulent notices of liens may be expensive and time-consuming. Filing fraudulent notices of liens or documents is both a crime and a civil offense, a tort. Incidents. Oklahoma City bombing conspirator Terry Nichols, who was convicted in 2004, was a member of the sovereign citizen movement, having asserted individual sovereignty in at least 3 court cases. 2010. In May 2010, 2 police officers in West Memphis, Arkansas, were shot and killed by Joseph T. Kane after Kane and his father were the subject of a traffic stop. Cain and his father were later identified as members of the Sovereign Citizen Movement. In September 2010, David Russell Merland, an associate of a Sovereign Citizens group, sent emails and placed telephone calls to various officials of the city of Kirkland, Washington, telling them to keep their doors unlocked, that they were going to be arrested, and that they should not resist. Merland also reportedly threatened federal judges and the chief prosecutor of King County, Washington. Merland's threat to arrest the mayor of Kirkland came about after he was arrested by police. His vehicle had been impounded after he was found driving with a suspended license and expired vehicle license tabs. An unloaded gun with ammunition nearby had been found on the seat of the car. Although he was not a law enforcement officer, Merland had claimed that he had the authority to form a group of private citizens to arrest felons in public office, as permitted by RCW 9A.16.020. On December 2, 2011, Merland was sentenced to 3 years and 4 months in federal prison after pleading guilty in connection with the threats he made, including the threat to forcibly arrest the mayor of Kirkland, Washington. Merland was released from prison on January 29, 2014. 2011. In March 2011, a central figure in the Sovereign Citizen Movement named Samuel Lynn Davis pleaded guilty to 31 counts of money laundering in federal district court in Nevada. Davis was snared in a sting operation after he agreed to launder more than $1.29 million in what he believed to be illicit funds. Davis accepted $73,782 in fees to launder the money, not realizing he was dealing with federal law enforcement agents. In October 2011, Davis was sentenced to 4 years and 9 months in federal prison, and was ordered to pay over $95,000 in restitution. As of late July 2012, Davis was classified as a fugitive, having failed to surrender to authorities to begin his prison sentence in June 2012. On August 7, 2012, Davis was arrested by sheriff's deputies in White Earth, North Dakota, and was scheduled for release from prison on April 24, 2017. On November 4, 2011, a federal jury in Montgomery, Alabama, found Monte Irvin guilty of conspiracy to defraud the United States and tax evasion. His wife Patricia Irvin was also found guilty of various related charges. According to a news release by the U.S. Department of Justice, Irvin and his wife had acquired hundreds of investment properties over a 10-year period, had received more than $9 million in rental income, but had paid nothing in federal income taxes. The Irvins reportedly claimed that they were not United States citizens, that they were sovereigns, and that they did not consider themselves subject to federal or state law. Irvin and his wife had also filed documents in probate court attempting to renounce their U.S. citizenship. In one filing, Irvin declared himself to be the governor of Alabama in its original jurisdiction. On May 29, 2012, Monte Irvin was sentenced to 10 years in prison, and Patricia Irvin was sentenced to 5 years of probation, with the condition that she spend 40 consecutive weekends in jail. In December 2011, Sean Talbot Rice was arrested at his home at Seligman, Arizona, after a 10-hour standoff with FBI agents and other law enforcement personnel. On July 24, 2012, Rice was found guilty in federal court in Nevada in connection with the same money laundering scheme that resulted in the conviction of Samuel Lynn Davis. The guilty verdicts came on 1 count of conspiracy to commit money laundering, 13 counts of money laundering, and 4 counts of failure to appear in court in connection with time that Rice spent as a fugitive. Rice, who had also falsely claimed to be a lawyer and a rabbi, was described as a leader in the anti-government Sovereign Citizens movement. During the trial, Rice tried to argue that the presiding federal judge had no authority to render a judgment against Rice. On March 20, 2013, Rice was sentenced to 8 years and 2 months in prison, and was ordered to forfeit over $1.29 million. As of early June 2014, Rice is incarcerated at the Florence Federal Correctional Institution at Florence, Colorado, and is scheduled for release on October 9, 2020. Brought to you by Wikividi Documentaries. Would you like to know more?